Hello all, welcome. This is Megan with CBT Nuggets. Today for this webinar we've got Keith Barker who's going to go over the CISSP with us. I do want to point your attention to the bottom left-hand corner where you guys can post questions at the end. Keith will review those questions and answer those for you. If we do not go through all of them on the webinar, he will stay after and answer those questions on chat. Also, this call or this webinar will be recorded and it will be found on our blog either later today or first thing tomorrow, and that's blog.cbtnuggets.com. I'm going to roll this over to Keith. Here you go.
Hey, thanks, Megan. And everybody who's joined us for a few minutes today, thank you very much for your time. We definitely appreciate it. I'd like to start off with a question, if you would. Go ahead and warm up your mice. You know how they work. I'd like to know, what are your main reasons for wanting a CISSP certification? And you can choose all that apply directly to you. So go ahead and take your mouse, and I'll give you a few moments. Read the options, and if you would, let us know what's important about the CISSP and why you're taking it or why you're pursuing it. All right, that is awesome. Let me go ahead and share. Wow, that is great. A lot of people validating their knowledge of info security to differentiate ourselves. You know, I think that's really amazing. A lot of times in a competitive environment, we as individuals need something that gives us that edge, right? For example, what makes person A better than person B? And sometimes it's the experience, which is awesome, and sometimes it's being able to demonstrate or quantify that experience, and the CISSP absolutely does do part of that for us. That's fantastic. I have one more question here for you, and that's simply this. What have you heard about the exam? Is it easy? Is it impossible? Is it challenging? What have you heard? Or maybe even if you've taken it already, where would you gauge it as far as challenging and tough? Is it easy, hard, or have you no idea exactly how it is? All right, so go ahead and put your votes in. Click on Submit. I'll give you a few more moments to do that. Let me go ahead and show you those results as well. And okay, a lot of people have heard this stuff. Now, when I took this certification, I took it as part of a business requirement for the federal contractor I was working with. They needed me to have top security clearance, and they needed me to have a CISSP. So in 2010, I did both of those. And I had like a month to prepare for the CISSP. When I took it, in those days, it's a few years ago, it was a 6-hour exam. And they would put us in a big room, and we used a real pencil and marked the little bubbles for the answers. And it was when I walked out, I felt like I had been beat up. 250 questions, 6 hours long, and 25 of those questions are just like practice bogus questions that they don't grade you on, except they don't tell you which questions they are. So you have to take all of them as if they all mattered, and then make your best choice regarding those. I do have a couple other questions I'd like to ask you, but let's take a look at some of the questions I get a lot about CISSP. And to do that, I'm going to do a share of my screen here and bring up a couple of details. Let me bring up this guy right here. To become a CISSP certified person, you have to be able to demonstrate a basic understanding of knowledge of information security in each of these 10 domains. So we have access control all the way down through physical security. And people often ask, okay, Keith, there's 10 domains. Which one's the hardest? Which one's the toughest? And the answer to that is really simple. The answer to that question is the one that you are not as familiar with is going to be the toughest section of the certification for you. For example, I don't do programming. I just don't. I configure stuff. I configure routers and switches. I may have done some Visual Basic back in the day, but I don't do C++. I don't do programming. So for me, one of my challenges was, okay, software development security and the procedures involved for that, and what kind of backdoors and so forth do we need to be aware of as far as implementing good, solid software for developing software. So the other piece I discovered in getting ready for my own exam back in 2010 was that there are a lot of books and information regarding CISSP out there. And what I would like to do is I'm going to stop this share just for a moment, and would like to ask you another question. This question is this: what have you used in the past to study for certifications like the CISSP? I am curious. This is more of a personal question. For me personally, I'm a visual learner. I enjoy watching things and having things explained to me, and that really makes it sink in. However, I do use books and other utilities as well. And if you go ahead and select the best answer here that applies, and that's another aspect too that I love about about the exam, is that a lot of times we have to choose the best answer, not absolutely the perfect answer. So in a CISSP environment, if you're asked about a question, maybe there's 3 great answers, meaning these 3 things would be important. Cryptography is important. Hashing is important. Authentication is important. High availability is important. So if we had a question on that had 3 of those answers, which one would we choose? And what I've discovered is that the best way to answer a question like that is to focus on CIA. And by the way, thank you for that feedback. Most people who are studying are going to use a blended approach with books and videos and practice exams, and that's awesome. So let me bring back my shared screen here, and let's talk about CIA for a moment. Now, in the U.S., CIA has several possible meanings. For example, the Central Intelligence Agency is one of those, but the CIA I'd like to talk about is confidentiality, data integrity, and availability. So in confidentiality, our major concern is to make sure that unauthorized access, unauthorized eyes do not see our confidential information. So how do we implement confidentiality? Well, we have data in a couple of places. We might have data sitting at rest on a server. We might have data in motion that's going across the network. And which one of those do we need to provide data confidentiality for? And the answer is both. So as far as device or files and servers and so forth, for files and disks, we can use encryption. Encryption is the primary method for protecting the confidentiality of data. And for data in motion, we would use something like VPNs, which could incorporate encryption, and secure protocols so that if the traffic is eavesdropped on the network, it wouldn't be compromised. Somebody steals the data, they don't have the keys to unlock it, it's just cipher garbage to them. They can't tell what it is, a ciphertext. The I stands for data integrity. And integrity is all about not allowing unauthorized individuals to change data. So confidentiality is about seeing the data, and data integrity is all about changing the data. So in a VPN, in a virtual private network, which the challenge is, a VPN does encryption and data integrity. So if we had a question, for example, like what is a hashing algorithm used for inside of a virtual private network? Now, because a hash is mainly focused on data integrity, about things that are changing, we would say it's all about confidentiality. We'd say it's all about data integrity. If they asked us which component of a virtual private network is AES, for example, and AES is the Advanced Encryption Standard, we can safely say, oh, we are concerned with confidentiality because we're talking about encryption. The last A in CIA is availability. So if you can't get to your data or your systems that you need, that's not a very secure system if you can't get the access you need. So the other A is, the last A, or the CIA, is availability. And availability comes in many different ways. We could have fault-tolerant infrastructure. For example, we could have 2 routers on our network instead of 1. So if one goes down, the other can still forward traffic. We could have 2 servers instead of 1 so that we could have fault tolerance between those devices. We could have hot sites. So maybe this is our headquarters location, and we have another location that is up, running, ready to go, 100%, all the data is replicated over there, and we could switch over at a moment's notice and have all that running. Now, what's the negative side of having a hot site? Well, it's like that movie Contact with Jodie Foster. The joke was, why buy 1 for $10 trillion when you can buy 2 at twice the price? If you have a hot site and your normal site, you've got to pay for all that infrastructure and all that data that's going and all the physical equipment and the resources that are running at the same time. So usually there's a good compromise between the two. We may have a production site, and then maybe there's a warm site, or maybe certain aspects of our network are fault tolerant. For example, inside of a server, we could use RAID and so forth. So all of this, by the way, that we're talking about here is just one of our several domains, and it happens to be network security. So we might have, for example, our other domains. And again, the one that you're the strongest in will be the easiest for you, but you'll need to be able to answer questions reliably and accurately about all the domains, whether it's access control with mandatory access control, or discretionary access control, or role-based access control, or rule-based access control. Every single aspect you need to be prepared for. So what I did was I thought to myself, if I was studying for CISSP again, I would want to have an awesome course that just nails everything. And that's the trick. As I went over the outline for the CBT Nuggets CISSP course that I created a month or so ago, I looked at it. I thought this project could last, 2 years. I could create just volumes of information on every single topic. However, I discovered that the certification is really wide. It covers a large breadth, but it doesn't go extremely deep into any specific subject. So what I tried to do is have a nice balance in each of these 10 domains and put a story together so that you and I, when you watch the videos, can go ahead and walk through them, each of the concepts. And my goal in the CISSP certification course is to prepare you to go ahead and get certified. Now, to that end, I do have another question for you. And the question is simply this. Let me get my mouse there. The question is this: how many years of real-world experience is required, emphasis on required, to become CISSP certified? Is it no years required, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or does it depend? And go ahead and I'm going to lock the results in here in just for a moment. So if you haven't yet answered, go ahead and click on Submit. And a lot of people are saying that it is 5 years, and that's awesome. Now, if you ever had a question about what are the real requirements to become CISSP certified, the right place to go would be the ISC Squared website, and it has all the details. Now, by default, they do require 5 years of real-world experience in 2 or more of the domains in the CISSP certification. So if you don't have those, you should go ahead and work on getting those. Secondly, they also allow you to waive one of those years if you have another certification. For example, if you are currently a CCIE with Cisco, boom, you can knock off one of those years and say, okay, I need 4 years of real-world experience in information security in 2 of the 10 domains. Also, if you have taken and passed the Comptia Security Plus certification, they will also knock off a year. Now, it's not cumulative. At best, they're going to knock off 1 year for a 4-year degree or for a CCIE or for some other certification. So it does depend if you have one of the other compensating certifications, but it's at least 4 years, and for most people it will be a 5-year requirement. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Let's do this next. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ISC website just for a moment and take a look at a couple other pieces I want to share with you. So let me go ahead and drag. Wow, that is not going to let me do that. Hold on one second. Let me close that. Let me drag this over here. There we go. Much better. Oh, by the way, this background that you are watching me scroll on, this is my workspace as I create nuggets. So I'm giving you kind of a background view of what the home office looks like as I create nuggets with CBT Nuggets. So here's the ISC Squared website. And if we want to learn more about the details of what's required exactly, how do I get endorsed, who could endorse me, and so forth, if we go up to Credentials and down to CISSP, just click on About the CISSP, and that's where all the details are. It talks about the benefits of certifying, how to certify, and step by step all the way through. Now, one of the questions I also get is this: Keith, I understand that I have to be recommended or endorsed by another CISSP or another certified individual. Could you do that for me? And the challenge is you need to be endorsed by somebody who really knows you personally and has a history with you that can vouch for your credibility and for your work experience. The other thing you'll have to do as part of becoming a CISSP is that you'll need to abide by and agree to the Code of Ethics for a CISSP, which is pretty simple, but it's pretty straightforward. For example, you're going to commit to never doing anything malicious on a network. You're not going to be doing unethical hacking on other people's wireless networks or physical networks or devices, or do anything that might compromise the integrity of other people's data and systems. So you'd want to make sure you read through that and agree to that and then prepare to abide by it. Now, one last thing is that once a person becomes CISSP certified, the fun doesn't stop there. The fun continues because you have to get continuing education credits or continuing certification to maintain your CISSP. And that can be done through, for example, attending conferences, a security conference where you attended classes, or through writing a book or an article. Or virtually, I went to DEF CON last year, and DEF CON qualified as one of the credits towards maintaining my CISSP. If you do go to DEF CON, by the way, which is held in Las Vegas, Nevada, please turn off any electronic devices before you get within like 50 yards of the building. It's a pretty serious hacker conference, and pretty much everybody's fair game. You know what was amazing to me at DEF CON was they had the wall of shame. And let me bring back the 10 domains here for a moment. And I don't have it up. That's okay. Let me go. But in the wall of shame, they basically do wireless sniffing, looking for anybody who's sending clear text passwords at the conference, at the DEF CON conference. And I'm amazed. The screen's just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I thought to myself, how in the world do these people, I'm talking about people at a security conference, a hacker conference, do they not know that using plain text protocols to send sensitive information is a death knell? And I guess they don't. And the opportunity for assisting the planet in becoming more secure, one keystroke at a time, one comment at a time, one certification at a time, is a great, not only an opportunity, it's really our obligation to make sure that you and I and everybody else who's CISSP certified are making a difference and educating people about password management and things that they should not be doing. Because at the end of the day, the biggest failure of a secure system, let's say you and I have designed a network and we've designed the systems and we've done all the right things, but at the end of the day, if a user chooses to compromise a system and that user has credentials, that is a weak link in the chain. And that's why auditing and administrative controls like mandatory vacations and separation of duties are all very, very important as part of the overall picture for a secure system, because fraud will happen and things do happen. We need to have security controls in place to go ahead and identify that. So let me go ahead and take this share off for a moment. And what I would like to do is I covered a couple core pieces that I wanted to share about the CISSP. And what I'd love to do is if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask me regarding anything that about the CISSP or about security or what have you, go ahead and take a moment and go ahead and chat that in. And what I'm going to ask Megan to do is any questions that come over, if you want to flag a few for my review, I'd be more than happy to take a look. I know doing the full screen share, I took away some of that for a period of time, so I apologize for that. But if anybody has questions regarding CISSP, about anything of the 10 domains for the certification, or anything else related to security, I'm very happy to go ahead and take those questions. So let me take a look. And I've got a question from Richard. He's asking, do you recommend someone acquire the CCSP before the CISSP? And that is a great question. And I don't have a CCSP, so I can't speak to it because I don't have knowledge of that specific certification. But what I would recommend is this. Someone who is considering a CISSP and they have the years of experience, they have at least 4 years of experience in 2 or more of the domains, I would strongly recommend that person take Security Plus first Now, Comptia is releasing. They haven't released it yet. It'll be released early spring, which is any week now. They're releasing a brand new version of the Comptia Security Plus. It's SY0401. And when that's released, or being the current one, it's going to be updated with cloud security and everything else. A person who is Security Plus can knock off one of the 5 years requirements of real-world experience. But more importantly, I think of the Security Plus as the mini-me version of a CISSP, because it does cover a large range of security topics, very much like the CISSP does, but it's more digestible, and it's not as intimidating for an individual to get a Security Plus. So I would strongly recommend the Security Plus first for somebody who's considering a CISSP, and then with that warm-up exercise, continue on to the CISSP for certification. All right. And Megan, do we have any other questions that you see that people would like me to take live? And Megan is muted at the moment, so I'm asking her in a chat mode. There we go. Another question is coming in from Ahmad. He's asking, hi Keith, please use simple English words. And you're doing great, but make sure you use simple English words. I appreciate that feedback. That is awesome. We know that a lot of our content is delivered all over the world to people from a variety of languages where English perhaps is not a first language. And I do, when I record, I make a conscious effort to make sure that I'm not speaking too fast. Now I'm excited now. I'm excited because I have a live audience, and so I am speaking a little bit faster than I normally would. But I do appreciate the comment and the reminder that we want everybody to benefit from all the training that I do and make sure I don't miss anybody. So thank you very much for that feedback. All right, another recommendation, or another question is, Richard's asking, do you have a book recommendation that would make a good supplement to the CBT Nugget CISSP course? And I do. The recommendation I would have, if you're going to go get one book, one book to study along with the CISSP from CBT Nuggets, it would be Sean Harris's book. Miss Sean Harris, or Ms. Sean Harris, I used her like second or third generation book when I was studying for my CISSP back in the day in 2010, which is just a few years ago. And as I did this course, I also purchased her newest book. And it's 1,400 pages long. They also sell a all-in-one set where it's got like the CISSP plus a whole bunch of practice questions. You can buy it in a bundle. Whatever Sean Harris's latest version is, that's a great desk reference for any topic that you want to dive really deep into. It's fantastic. I don't know how she has done that and maintained it over all these years. It's probably the ultimate. It's like the Bible for CISSP. It wouldn't be one of those books that we would like read from cover to cover because there's just too much, content about all the 10 domains. But it's a great reference to dive in deep on any subject that you want to or need to. Okay, another question is coming in from Clarabelle asking, what is the best way to study? And here's the secret. For me, personally, if I have a brand new, the CISSP hopefully won't be brand new for anybody. But let's say we're approaching CISSP together, you and me, Clarabelle. We're going to say we're going to sit down, we're going to be study partners. The very first thing to do is set a time allocation for your studies. For example, if there's other significant people in your life that you spend time with, for example, family, friends, significant others, and so forth, you'd want to allocate some time for your studies and let them all know that that time is dedicated to study. So I'd say first is allocating the time. So maybe it's 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day. And during that time, we don't do email, we don't do social media, we just focus on our studies. So as we sit down to study, what we do is identify, okay, I want to study, for example, this specific topic. So maybe it's, network admissions control, or cloud computing, or defense in depth, or whatever the topic we want to study. We'd go ahead, and what I personally would do is I like a kickstart with some kind of a video. I'm a very visual person. I want to see somebody talking to me. I want to hear something. So I would probably watch it with a video, and then as I watched that, I would take notes. So I'd have, if you watched me do this, I'd have a piece of paper, And as the person is talking, I would be writing stuff down. I would pushing pause periodically. So I'd pause, write stuff down, and play, pause. Now, truthfully, I rarely go back to my notes. And so some people say, well, Keith, why do you take notes if you're not going to go back to them? Well, the reason I take notes is because it gives me another input into my brain. So the more senses that we can wrap around the concept, whether it's IPsec or whether it's some change control management process, or whether it's physical security and how tall a perimeter fence should be, the more senses we can put into learning that, writing it down, writing those notes down, the better we will remember it. So during that time, I would be watching a video. I would be using a reference book, very likely to dig in deeper. I might do some Googling on that subject if I needed to find more information. And then before I finish the session I'm in, I would also allocate time for my next session. And what that means is this. Let's say it's 5 minutes left. I'd say, okay, tomorrow at this time when I'm going to study, I'm going to study and I'd pick my other topic. So maybe that topic is, for example, let me go ahead and bring this up. Maybe that topic is going to be DMZs or firewall technologies or something else to that effect. I would make a note of what I'm going to study tomorrow. I would then get that study material lined up so that the next day when I step into my study zone, I have the videos lined up. I'd have the book next to me that I could read from if I needed to. I'd have my notes ready, and I would just enjoy it. The other secret is this. Enjoy the process, because life is all about process. At the end of life, you know what there is? Death. So every moment, whether we're studying or we're working or we're spending time with family or we're exercising or sleep, whatever it is we're doing, make sure you get the most out of that moment and enjoy it. Please see the CISSP as a process that you enjoy, and your learning will go faster. That's one of my secrets in the videos we create, is that if I can inject a little bit of fun into those videos, as you and I talk together in those videos, that if you're feeling happier in general, you're going to be able to learn much, much quicker. And that's one of the secrets that I've used in all of our CBT Nuggets as well. All right. One last question, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Megan because I think we're almost out of time. For those people who have comments in the queue where I couldn't get to them via voice, hang around and I will chat after the webinar audio closes. I will chat back to make sure I answer all those questions. Final question is this. Is there a lab environment that you'd recommend in preparing for the exam, be it physical or virtual? The good news is for CISSP is it's vendor neutral. They're not going to ask you specifics about really doing anything. So as far as configuring Juniper or Checkpoint or Palo Alto or Cisco or any other gear or setting up digital certificates or PKI or anything else, they're not going to ask you to do diddly squat. They simply want to know, do you understand how the pieces work? For example, if you have a public-private key system, how do those keys interoperate? What does a PKI do? What does a certificate authority do? What's in a certificate that's relevant? Why would a certificate be revoked? But they're not going to ask you to actually do anything. So this is an exam. They're expecting you to have your real-world experience from 2 or more domains of the 10 domains, but they're not going to ask you to actually implement or do anything inside of the actual certification. But all that real world, absolutely, that knowledge you've gained from real world will help you overall as you answer the questions in the CISSP certification. So that's the last one we have time for, but I will again take the remaining ones in the written queue after the audio closes. Hey, Megan, I think I left you like a minute and a half. I apologize about pushing it to the end. I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Hey, not a problem at all. First, of course, thank you all who came to this webinar. I hope you guys were able to gain as much knowledge as I did here listening to the fabulous Keith Barker. And of course, thank you, Keith Barker. You did a great job. A reminder, Keith will stay on after this webinar and answer the following questions that did not get answered. You can see those answers in your chat queue, so don't log out. And this blog has been, or excuse me, this webinar has been recorded and can be found on our blog later this afternoon or tomorrow, and that's blog.cbtnuggets.com. Thank you all.